as Sherlock Holmes would say, said once. He says, these things have a corrosive effect on us. They rust us from the inside out.
Yeah.
And so like me, like so many other people, like I'm the diamond, just put more pressure on me. Pressure makes diamonds. Yeah, but you put enough pressure on any diamond, it's going to crack,
Yeah.
and that we're seeing that more.
Welcome back to the Executive Exhale podcast, folks. I'm excited today because we have Jason Munson here today. I want to introduce him more formally. He's known as the Stress Interventionist, a leading consultant at NeuroChange Solutions. He specializes in leveraging the transformative power of neuroscience to master stress management techniques that enhance both professional performance and personal well-being. And we're all about that here at Executive Exhale. So it's going to be good to talk to you today. Working in collaboration with Dr. Joe Dispenza, he has developed programs that not only tackle stress head on, but also promote substantial improvements in emotional intelligence and overall life balance. Today, we're going to dive a little deeper into what Jason does here in advanced neuroplasticity methodologies and how they can significantly reduce workplace stress, boosting critical thinking, self-awareness, and cooperative communication. We'll also discuss his tailored approach to meditation practices designed to stabilize emotional and mental states, catalyzing both creativity and productivity. So I'm really excited to have you here, Jason. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Dispenza's work, have been for years. So I am really interested to hearing about you, though, your story, what brings you to this work, and how is it that you help people? Let's start with you, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah, so I've kind of been this guy that's always just kind of wanted to hide behind a desk and just like do my thing and be normal and just kind of live my life and take care of my family
Yeah.
and do that and I faked that pretty well for a long time and did successfully. I actually came from the e-commerce world. I come from that world,
Right.
selling products online and just kind of being more of like, Oz, like kind of just be like, never mind the guy behind the curtain. As long as everything's going the way you want it, then why should you care about me?
Yeah, exactly.
And then, like so many other people, it just wasn't enough. It's like I just kept on trying to keep my head low, but there was just like something inside of me that just kept on crying out. And I found all the reasons over the years to suppress that voice. Very good reasons, to do that. But the longer I did it, the more I hated it. And so it finally got to a point where 3 years ago, I went through a total burnout, like just absolute total collapse of being able to function because it just wasn't working anymore. And that's what led me to Dr. Joe's work. I've been listening to a mentor of mine, David Meltzer, had Dr. Joe on his podcast, and I'm hearing him talking about, how that our thoughts can actually make us sick. That there actually is a physiological response to our negative thoughts, our negative emotions. They show up inside of our bodies as disease. And so this is what I had started to experience is that my negative thoughts, my negative emotions had piled up in such a way where I couldn't ignore them anymore. So what the other thing that he teaches is that it stands to reason that if our thoughts can make us sick, could our thoughts actually make us better? That was like the thing that got my curiosity. I listened to that podcast a couple of times because I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. I was thinking, better in terms of like, business, how I can make more money, things like that. And I didn't want to address or think that I had any sort of like mental or emotional problem that really needed to be dealt with, So until it was right up in my face, and one of the things he says is that you can get to this work
Mm-hmm.
through through the process of joy and fulfillment. Like you can find it that way, or you can come here through pain and suffering.
Yeah.
But you're gonna get here one way or another. You're gonna get here, and whether it's through Dr. Joe or through somebody else, is like we just get to these points in our lives where it's like the way we've been doing things for so long, it's just not working anymore. And the stuff that we used to do to pacify that voice inside of us that says, no, this is not enough. I need to be better. I need to do better. I need to get better. Those things stop working.
Yeah.
And so no amount of yoga, no amount of gym work. For me, I live in Lake Tahoe. I could climb all the mountains and I could go swim in all the lakes and all the streams, and that wasn't going to fix it.
Yeah.
I had to go inside of me. So I went through this breakdown, and after like 6 weeks of like severe depression and like getting worse and worse and worse, with no way out, and me having to like say things to my family like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to
Yeah.
provide, I finally said, okay, I need some help. And the problem is that help was going to be a week away, and I knew that help was going to come in the form of a pill, and that wasn't going to solve my problem. That was just going to be a band-aid. And so I was just like, okay, I need something today. I need something. I need something I could do right now. I need something today.
Yeah.
And I can't wait a week, and it can't be a pill. And so I pulled up Dr. Joe's website. I found one of the online courses, and I just locked myself in my office with it, because this is something I can do. And what I learned on that first day changed everything.
Yeah.
And I learned what was causing me to have the breakdown that I was having, and what I would need to do to be able to fix it. And I was just in that right sweet spot where I was in so much pain that I had to focus on the solution very intensely. I couldn't, there wasn't anything around me that I could let distract me from focusing on doing this work.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, the intensity of that energy of putting it into that, by the end of that first day, my depression was gone.
Yeah.
And it never came back.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing actually how much we hold within our bodies when we're willing to go into them in some way, shape, or form. I found Joe Dispenza's work, along with other work that I've done in somatics and breathwork therapies, to be a tremendously powerful approach to addressing some of our sort of warped thinking around our world. For those that are unfamiliar with Dr. Dispenza, how would you describe the essence of his teachings to people, just so we can kind of bring people to the same page here, as to what our experiences collectively might be with Dr. Dispenza's work?
Yeah, so you can see I have one color lighting on one side and one color lighting on the other side, and I would love to say that this is going to like be intentional, represent like this metaphor perfectly, but the truth is one of my lights is failing. So
There's no accidents, though, right?
yeah, no accidents. So we'll use this as we'll use it anecdotally and metaphorical for Dr.
Yeah,
Joe.
yeah,
So on one side of Dr. Joe, you have pure science, of really getting deep into the science of what is going on inside of our neurology, what is going on our biology, how does this cause us to show up the way that we are, how does this develop habits, how does this develop conditioning, and how are we getting the results in our life through the science of our brains and our body,
right,
and he does a ton of research on this side. He gets into how do our emotions affect our genetic expression. That is the science of epigenetics. So literally by how we think, act, and feel, we actually change our gene expression. So he's really been a champion of this science, and the reason is because he came over from this side, which was more of the woo-woo side. He was in a bicycle accident in his 20s that left him laying face down on a table all day. He couldn't walk. And he had heard of people who had had spontaneous remissions. And he said, I know that there's an energy inside of my body that is keeping me alive. And that energy doesn't come from me, it comes from somewhere else. That energy also has the ability to heal my body. If my body can heal itself, if I cut myself and I can heal myself from a cut, is it possible that my body has the energy to heal the damaged vertebrae inside my body, and so that I could be able to walk again? And so he started playing with that idea and ended up 12 weeks later walking without a surgery. And that got him curious about, okay, so what did he do? So he came from this woo-woo side of things, of I healed myself with my mind, what are you talking about? So that put him on like, okay, I'm gonna go study this. I'm gonna go find other people. What are other people doing?
Mhm.
you know and he was like, well, maybe they're vegan, maybe they're vegetarian, maybe are they yogis, are they spiritual, all this. He was trying to find, what was the diet, what was the regimen. And what he found is that they were tall, short, they were fat, they were skinny, they were men, women, they were from every single race. They were people who were smokers that were totally obese, that were completely horrible on their bodies, and there were people that were absolute saints with their bodies. But the one thing that they all believed is that there was an energy inside of their bodies that had the power to heal them, and if they could just connect with that energy, that they could heal themselves. That brought him to the science.
Mm.
What is the science behind this? And the science is became just absolutely fascinating. And so I love both sides. I love I love the quantum side of like, okay, there's just so much about our universe that we don't understand, about frequency and energy and where that comes from and what source is, and all that we don't know. And then like studying it and transferring it over to something that's quantifiable that we do know. So I guess that would be, how I would explain the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza as I understand it today. Ask me tomorrow, I'll tell you something totally different. Because my
Yeah,
life might be.
I'm a big believer that, and I've seen it in the work that I do with a methodology that a friend of mine curated called Heart Breath, which really is the heart brain coherence piece. And it's building on a variety of different practices, including Joe Dispenza's, where we use breath to regulate our neurological system and to activate it so that we can get into the very places and spaces within our body where we hold traumatic memory at the cellular level and able to release it through breath. And it's funny because when we do these sessions with people, when I've done these sessions with people, I've had some very, quote, left brain, which left right brain thing is kind of out the window scientifically, but that whole sort of very logical, science based approach to people's mindset around certain woo woo practices like breath work can put them in a very stiff place. But what I found, and it's interesting, I had a particular client who it took 3 or 4 sessions for this individual to really get into the body. And once he did get into the body, what was released was tremendous. And I remember him saying how much lighter he felt and how much more grounded he felt. And so maybe not Dispenza's work directly, but just to make the point that you're saying is that the science is emerging in this area. We understand how the neurological system works. We know how parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system is activated either through breath or through thoughts. We know how that we can control how our neurological system responds to things based on how we breathe or how we think or how we feel. And so I think that it's interesting to see that scientific side is really starting to grow. I think most recently I watched a recent television special of his, or a YouTube special of his, and he was talking about how he was collating and collecting all of this data pre and post sort of deep dive sessions with him, and seeing things like inflammatory markers decreased post 5-day retreat, or
Right.
the cancer markers are down in the body, that kind of thing. It's fascinating to me to see these physical physiological changes to what he's doing in his sessions. It's just fascinating to me. Such an emerging area, and to be honest with you, very exciting because I mean, I don't know whether you know it or not, but the health system in Canada is while socialized. I never have to worry about going into debt if I have a heart attack. The reality is, it is still failing people, and it's not hitting the mark for some disease processes, in particular the chronic disease area. And so this work with Joe Dispenza, breathwork, other modalities, even going into the older sciences that have been around forever, like Chinese medicine science, is people are going back to these things or going to these things because they're, as you had say, like, I'm desperate. I am done feeling like crap. I need something today that makes me feel good, right? Can you bring us along a little bit around the meditative practices that you use? I know they're based on Joe's work, but can you share with us sort of how you walk through that for yourself And do you help other people in this realm as well? I really want to understand that so that we can really highlight what it is you're doing to support other people as well. So maybe walk us through a little bit of that in terms of your meditative practices.
Sure. And when you say it like that, I don't know, it makes me feel like it's like I'm some sort of like guru, that I have this thing, like I'll walk you through my meditative practices. Look deep into my eyes. Uh, you know, eh, so I teach meditation. I teach it on a personal development level, like one on one with people, and we can kind of go deep into that, and it's personal. I also teach it on a corporate level. And that's where it gets really interesting. And when we
Mm,
talk to people about, on a corporate level, because everybody, or very often you can have people that are very much up in their heads,
yeah.
sort of thing. And it's very analytical. You get into some cultures where it's like the idea of being emotional is like not there. I remember my dad was like this. It was like this idea of like, I don't have emotional problems. Like, he would say that. He would stamp out that, "I don't have any problems emotionally." It's like, "Yeah, you do." Um, so you have to, getting into the corporate environment, we have to give some explanation around what is the definition of meditation,
Right.
how you defined it. And one definition of meditation is reflection, just thinking about your thoughts. Another is to plan, to
Yeah.
think about your future, right? Another one is to become familiar with. So when we break down a meditation, when it's something like that, like this is not something that's woo woo. This is something everybody has done this at some one point or another. They've thought about their thoughts. They've thought about their future, and meditation is very much about that. There are some meditations that are just about relaxing. That are just about relaxing the brain and the body. I think all meditation is really about, and especially where we're at now in a world and a society where we're in a stress pandemic, worldwide, people are more stressed out than they've ever been before. So when you're in high stress, and a lot of people will say, well, I'm not stressed out, or I can handle the stress, perfectly fine. No, it's not true. Unless you've been trained to do it, unless you're doing a meditative process these days, it's like 70% of people are in stress for 70% of their day, sort of thing. So these high stress levels that people think that they can handle until it shows up as cancer or disease. Or what happens when a person is in high stress, one of the things that happens is their immune system shuts down. So if you're in a high stress job every single day and your immune system is shutting down, then you're more susceptible to disease.
Yeah.
Long term, you do it for 10, 20, 30 years, you're susceptible to like autoimmune disease, things like that. It also shuts down your reproductive system. So you have these really high stress women, these A-type personalities and high stress jobs that are trying to get pregnant. There's no energy left inside the body for a long-term building project.
Yeah,
So,
I experienced that. We had to go through fertility treatments in my 30s for the exact same reason.
and a lot of people, they go through the treatments and it doesn't work, and they give up, and they finally relax because they're not so stressed about the treatments working. Then they get pregnant.
My second pregnancy was twins, and that's the reason.
So meditation
Yeah,
is a process of getting us out of stress. So we're not trying to predict what's going to happen in the future. We're not having anxiety or worry about what's happening in the future, and we're not reliving the stress from the past. We're getting ourselves into the present moment where our autonomic nervous system is now in balance. Our brain is in homeostasis. The body is in a relaxed state. So whatever form of meditation that you're doing, if that's the goal is, of getting there, is to bring your body back into homeostasis. And that's where it can heal, and that's where things can grow, and that's where, changes can happen inside of the brain and the body. So from a very basic level, that's what, I'm doing with meditation, what everybody does with meditation, whether they realize it or not. And it's the same thing that's happening with the breath work, is you're bringing yourself into that present moment, not thinking about the past, not trying to predict the future. You're getting into the present moment. So however you get there, that is the important thing. I take it to another level of like, so what do you do once you get there? And now when you're in this place,
mhm.
in meditation, we're actually slowing our brain waves down. We're getting into the operating system of the subconscious mind. And when we're in there, we can take a habit or a personality trait. If someone, let's just say that they're really quick with their temper, they're easily reactive, and they recognize that this is something that is a negative trait, that they're overreactive. And what would be the opposite of that? Let's say that they choose would to be peaceful and calm. So they want to be peaceful and calm, but they find themselves being reactive. What we can actually do in the meditation process is we can unfire and unwire the part of the brain that is been habituated to being reactive, and saying that this is the part of our personality that I want to leave behind, this reactive, quick temper personality. And the part of my personality I want to take on is the part that's in clarity and peace. That's peaceful and slow to respond. That's more thoughtful. That gives a pause in between the stimulus and response. It actually takes time to just go into a peaceful, calm place, calm confidence. I want to develop this part of my personality. So if we do that in the meditation process, there's on a subconscious level, they're leaving this part of themselves behind, and they're taking on this new part of their personality. If you do that enough times, you neurologically and biologically are undoing this part of you. You're weakening it.
Yeah.
You're making it weaker, and you're making this other part of you stronger. And now that I'm doing this, and I'm doing this with my hands, I'm really thinking I'm going to keep these lights just the way that they are.
It's definitely very symbolic. I like that. It's like the shadow. It's like
Yeah,
your shadow self and your enlightened self kind of all in one picture. It's kind of awesome.
right. No,
Yeah,
I think it works great. Maybe I should put like up here, old self, new self, so that
maybe. Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
I'll do some signage with it. So yeah, that's on a basic level, that's what where we go with meditation. But the powerful effects that it has, beyond that, upon on our health. For some doctors read this material. They read the case studies, and they're just like, I see it. I just can't believe it.
Well, I mean, they're trained in a different system, and they're not actually trained to look at the person as a holistic. They're trained in systems. So, I'm a respirologist. I just know the lungs, and they don't really look at us as whole pictures. I know as a registered nurse, that was my first career working with physicians. They can be very myopic in how they treat clients or patients. What I love, what you're bringing to the table, and it's something that I'm a firm believer in, is when we're activating our cortisol systems or our adrenals through stress, chronic stress, you're in chronic inflammatory mode. And people will say, and I agree with you, I've had high level execs say, I'm doing fine. I'm not really that stressed out. And then I'll start asking questions. So do you have high blood pressure? Well, yeah, but it's treated with medication. Okay, but do you understand that high blood pressure is an inflammatory process that's related to stress and related to your cardiovascular system being inflamed? And they're like, well, yeah, but that's just because I'm old. No, 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 you have more control than that, right? And it's just having those conversations of awareness. So I love that you bring the notion of, people often think that they're coping when their body is in fact not. Do you have heartburn? Well, yeah, but only when I eat certain foods. Yeah, heartburn is also linked to stress. And, it's just when you start waking up the notion that these subtle signs that your body is telling you, that achy joint, right? The temperamental bladder, the irritable bowel stuff, all of that is your body telling you, you're just not coping with stress, friend. Like, it's just not working for us. And you ignore, ignore, ignore. And the other theory, of course, is chronic irritation equals cancer, right? So my dad is a perfect example of this. He had heartburn for decades. What did he die of? Esophageal cancer, right? So you just do the math. It makes sense. The data is there. Whether we choose to believe it or not, science doesn't care what your beliefs are. It just is, right? It's just a fact. So thanks for
You bring
bringing
up a
that to
good
the,
point.
yeah.
So one of the systems that shuts down is your digestive system,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
somebody's shutting down their digestive system, they're through high stress, so then shows up as cancer,
Yeah.
esophageal cancer. My mom has what's called Barrett's esophagus syndrome,
Yep.
which is a long-term exposure to acid reflux. And my mom has always been a very, anxious person. But going back to something you said a little bit earlier, is that stress is not, if a person is under stress,
Hmm.
okay, they get put into a stressful job or a stressful relationship, personal, professional, whatever the relationship is. We kind of have, and I don't know where this comes from, but most everybody that I've talked to has this idea that the longer that they're in it, the better they are at handling it.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
And
The myth.
which is like saying, which is like, the idea would be like, so does that mean that the more that you're exposed to secondhand smoke, the better your body is at dealing with it? It's
Yeah.
like, no, it's not. This is a cumulative effect. So the longer that you stay in stressful situations, you might get used to it, just like a person can get used to secondhand smoke. But that doesn't mean that it's not having a negative effect on your body. And stress, as as Sherlock Holmes said once, he says, these things have a corrosive effect on us. They rust us from the inside out.
Yeah.
And so, like me, like so many other people, like, I'm the diamond, just put more pressure on me. Pressure makes diamonds. Yeah, but you put enough pressure on any diamond, it's going to crack,
Yeah.
and that we're seeing that more. And when we translate that into businesses and organizations, so a friend of mine who's a anesthesiologist at a very large hospital system here, I was talking to him about stress among the nurses. And he's like, well, I can see they're in stress. I'm like, okay, well, let me ask you this question. Are they having sick days? He's like, oh yeah, tons. He says, not only are they having sick days, they are having work-related injuries that are causing them to get additional days off. And I said, does that affect patient care? And at first he said no.
Oh, but it does.
But later on, he said, sometimes we don't have enough staff for a procedure and we have to reschedule the procedure. I'm like, that affects patient care. They literally didn't get cared for when they were supposed to get the care.
Yeah, the
You know?
data's pretty clear about that. If you have a stressed out bunch of nurses, you have an increased amount of medical errors,
Yeah.
medications that are given improperly, et cetera, that cause secondary side effects and can cause the system to cost the system tens of millions of dollars more per year because of it. Just
Yeah.
those errors alone. Yeah.
One of the most dangerous problems with or risk with blood transfusions is mismatched blood types. People being given the wrong blood. And we calculated it out. Oh, and here's the other thing is that when this happens, if a surgery gets canceled because the nursing staff isn't there, the hospital still have to pay all the doctors as if they did the surgery. It's an average expense of nearly $5,000. We calculated it out for this hospital, and we figured out that they're losing $1 million a month in surgeries that were canceled because they didn't have sufficient.
Yeah, and then you calculate into that the rotational costs. So nurses that come and go, come and go, come and go.
Right.
About 15 years ago, I asked the question, how much does it cost to hire and retrain a new nurse? And at that time, this is about 15 years ago, it was between 20 grand or 22,000 and $30,000 to hire and retrain a new nurse. So if you can reduce the amount of exits that nurses are making, or any staff this translates, by the way, to any organization,
Right.
you reduce your recruitment costs and your turnover costs tremendously. It's like a no-brainer. Low-hanging fruit is the phrase we use in the corporate world. Nonsensical thing that would so easily fix a lot is if you just address some of the stress levels in your organization, you can reduce the costs of that, and it affects your bottom line. Within a year, you'll see a difference in your bottom line, or less within a quarter or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, the data is pretty clear on that. So it sounds to me like you really found the way to managing your own personal stress. It sounds like you've really recovered your own mental health story through this. I want to make sure that we're very clear, and as a registered nurse or retired registered nurse, I have to be very clear about this. This work is not panacea, guys. This is not like a fix it necessarily the be and end all. It's about a change and a shift in your behaviors, in your choices, in your activities that over time can see miraculous things happen. So I just want to be clear about that. Like, it's not you come in, you do one Dispenza thing. It can be that way, as it was for you. But I want to be clear, there's some people it might take more than just the one time being exposed to this. I just want to be clear about that, because for me, it was. For me, it was. For me, it was heart breath, Joe Dispenza. It took about, I don't know, somewhere between 4 and 6 sessions with my heart breath therapist, plus listening to Joe Dispenza pretty much daily for like a month, for me to really deal with my own mental strategies, my own mental health. And to be transparent with folks who are listening, I've had suicidal ideation in my life. This is not like, I'm not talking minor depression. I'm talking I'm worth more dead than alive kind of conversations with people.
Yeah.
And so I get that.
So can I say something about what you just
Yeah.
shared?
Yeah.
So the idea of it being a panacea event, it can be.
It can be.
It can be.
Yes.
But don't make that your expectation.
Right.
If you come in with that expectation, it won't.
Yeah, 100%.
There are a lot of people who, have experiences like I had, where it's like, depression gone one day. It's like,
Yep.
people have that. People have other things, other physical things that have happened with them, and then it's very well reported. That they go spend a week-long, meditation retreat with Dr. Joe, and they have a condition when they come in, and that condition is gone when they leave. Like that happens. It doesn't happen for everybody, and maybe for me, it's like, well, put it this way: it's like if I started with depression and it was gone in one day, but it took me a long time to get. It took me a ramp, to get to that day. That I got there, but ultimately it's like, so if I have that happen to me, am I going to stop there? It's like, it took care of my depression, but it's like, depression is not the only thing in my life, so it's like, so I've continued with this work for years to work on the other things. And, every now and again, like pop goes the weasel, and, a condition that I had, that I've been working on for a long period of time, so all of a sudden got better. I had this like post-nasal drip for years, and it started to affect my ability to talk. And there was like this tickle that was inside of my throat. And I worked on it, there was actually somebody through, ear, nose, and throat doctor, actually one of Dr. Joe, somebody that I met at a Dr. Joe event. He says, we have a surgery for this, we can take care of this, sort of thing. And in one weekend, it went away, just was there. And then it just was gone.
Right.
So you can get the one-off,
Yeah.
and a lot of people experience the one-off, but it's like, this is like you're talking about, this is a holistic, medicine for our entire bodies. There's no doubt about it. More and more research is showing things they used to think were genetic, things that they used to think were hereditary. Oh, you got exposed to this, and now you have this cancer. They're finding more and more and more that no, these are stress-related diseases, and the science behind this is very strong to back this up.
Yeah, and I would add to that, having come from big T, little t trauma in my childhood, and having experienced a major shift as a result of this kind of work for myself, there's also a mounting level of evidence. And I follow Dr. Gabor Mate, and he talks a little bit about trauma and how you can show up as you look like you have ADHD, but you don't have ADHD, you have trauma brain. And it's because of the stress you experience as a younger person. And it changed your neural pathways. It changed how you are wired to respond to the world that you learned early on was very dangerous and unsafe. So doing this work between heart breath and therapy and the breathwork side and Joe Dispenza and other things, including head talk, by the way, I have found that that holistic approach has been a tremendous help to me learning how to handle my own stress, helping clients overcome their stress loads, like using the similar tactics and helping them overcome those mental barriers around, but is this really going to work for me? Like, is this really going to work? Right? You must hear that all the time in the corporate office. Like, really, like, this sounds like woo woo shit. I don't know if this is going to work for me. I would love to hear your thoughts around that because I've gotten that a few times from people like that's it works for you, but I don't know if that's going to work for me because I'm a pretty high strung like high level exec and I don't know that this is going to work for me.
Well, if there was ever a poster boy that for that, it won't work for me. That was me.
Right.
You
Okay.
know, and it goes deep. For me, it actually goes into feelings of unworthiness.
100%.
Of my view of my life, of the mistakes that I've made, the stuff that I've done, or habits that I have of like, feeling unlovable by God.
Yeah.
It's like, so all that. So, when I got, and so many people can get to this point of like where they're, the self-defeatism, the beating of oneself goes so bad. It's like, I don't, and this is where it gets really insidious. I don't deserve it.
Yeah.
You get to, that can become a subconscious belief. Like, I just don't, it's not up front where like they're saying like, I don't, like, they have this unconscious belief, subconscious belief, I don't deserve it. Or, anybody who's doing this work is learning and growing,
Yeah.
constantly learning and growing. And I'm learning and growing in this work. And I just ran into somebody yesterday who said that to me. And I haven't really figured out a good answer for it yet,
Mm.
myself. I haven't figured out how to language that, and so that's where I can use some coaching and some help, in my own growth process is, what if, is the person who says, I'm not stressed out at all, and I like what you said, your perspective, as a nurse, it's like, oh, asking certain questions, that are related to symptoms inside, their body, that are commonly related to stress. And I think coming from your background, that's a very natural set of questions to ask because you deal with that, so frequently. I come from an e-commerce background. I come from, something that is outside, of medicine. I've coached people for years and years and years on this stuff and didn't know that's what I was coaching people on. Like, I've had this natural gravity towards it, this natural attraction to. Now it's like, how do I even stop it? Yeah. Like, I can stop it if I wanted to, now it just keeps on coming up no matter where I go. But I like your approach of, is that you can go from symptomatic, so one question, if I had to do yesterday over and over again, I might ask the question, well, so are you constantly thinking of worst case scenarios?
Right.
That's a stress response.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
find yourself waking up at 4 a.m. questioning the decision you made yesterday?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, where are your thoughts at? And do you realize that, if you're having that is a symptom of you being in a stress state. And if you're thinking those thoughts, then you're feeling the feelings of those things. And as if they've already happened, those negative feelings and thoughts are actually causing your body to shut down your immune system. And this can lead to long-term illness. Were you aware of that? I guess
Yeah.
if I could do it over again, yesterday's
Yeah.
maybe.
The other thing too is I had a gentleman who was a runner and very, very fit and also did a lot of cycling and was really didn't have a lot of physiological symptoms. His issues, though, physiologically speaking, were lack of sleep his main issues was his marriage was stressed.
Mm,
His relationship with his wife was not great. And I asked the question, we were having sort of a coaching call, and I asked the question sort of, like, do you see the connection between what's happening with your wife and your stress levels, or do you not see that connection? Like, I'm curious. How
Mm,
can you not see that connection? Because it's more than just our physical bodies. I mean, I love the fact that you're bringing that to the table because that's a very personal experience. That's very your body will tell you, and you'll be like, okay, I've got a lot of headaches. I've got diabetes now. I've got all these mood issues and my hormones
right.
out of whack, whatever. But I like to think of it from a holistic perspective as well. How's your marriage doing? How's your relationship with your children? How's things going at work? Like when you had your last 360, how was that? And the reason why I ask those questions often is because the stress permeates through all of that stuff, all of
Absolutely.
it. And the
Yeah.
work that we're doing and the work that you do with your Dispenza work and also meditative practice and what you bring to the corporate world, that supports people so that they can overcome some of these struggles around stress. It's so
Yeah.
insidious. Stress is so insidious and it's everywhere.
I mean, you gave me an idea. I'm sure this is already out there. That I'm sure that somebody has already created some sort of questionnaire, about stress.
Yeah.
It's like, so maybe the next time I'm somebody who says, "Oh, I deal with stress." Great. Oh, great. Have you ever taken a stress assessment?
I believe the American Psychological Association has something you can use for stress related stuff. You can take a look. I created one myself just because this is the world I work in. But
Right.
but yeah, there's definitely stuff out there, and and if anyone's interested, my leadership, energy, and stress resilience scorecard is actually in the link down below. So take a look at it.
Oh,
But
awesome.
that's definitely something you could do because then it supports your staff. It allows them to sort of self assess where they're at, and then you can work with them because then it's actually metrics based, which my people love. Corporate love metrics. You give them an assessment, they look at the score. Okay, now I got to get a better score. I don't want to be under 40 anymore. I want to be a 70. Well, okay, what do we need to get you to? What do we need to do to get you to that 70 mark, right? So it's sort of how do we I personally love assessments for this particular group of people because I find that they love data. So it really helps them to kind of move,
Right.
right? And then it justifies and validates the work you're doing in supporting them because then when you bring your tactics to them to try and they go, wow, that really works. Okay, well, let's redo that assessment we did 6 months ago and see where you're at.
I love where you're going with this,
Yeah.
because we do this, right? Anybody in medicine. So I'm working with a hospital right now. Anybody in medicine, and most people know, will agree to go get a yearly physical.
Yeah, of course. They'll get
You
blood
know,
work done.
and
No
they'll
big
get their
deal.
blood work done,
Yeah.
and then you're going to meet with your doctor and they're going to talk, it's like I'm in my 40s, so it's like we get to talk about things like cholesterol and LDPs and all these different blood markers, triglycerides, these things like
Yep.
that. And you get on a treatment plan for to how to deal with that stuff, but the idea of like I'm not going to go get a physical so I don't know what's wrong, because if I don't know what's wrong, then nothing bad is going to happen to me. It's like there is a large segment of our population that are like that.
Well, I mean, I take myself as an example of this, where the last physical I went to, I mean, I care, I'm still working on shedding the weight that I had gained during my burnout experience from 3 years ago when I quit my six-figure job to do this work. And but when I go to the doctors, though, my triglycerides are normal.
Mm,
Hormones are fine, even though I'm in perimenopause. Like, no, my hormones are not fine. I needed HRT because I symptomatically needed it, but everything in my blood work was fine. I'm not diabetic. I'm pre-diabetic, but I'm not diabetic yet. And it was
right.
all of those things where it's like, on paper, oh yeah, I went for a calcium test too. Yeah, it turns out I only have about a 20% blockage in any one of my coronary arteries. And there's no atherosclerosis yet because I'm 53 and I had estrogen protecting me up until about 2 years ago. So I'm fine, right? I'm fine. No, I can still have a heart attack. I can still stroke out. I can still have depression. I can still have aches and pains because I'm still affected by the stress. It's just not showing up in the documentation at work yet or in the medical system. But that
It's
doesn't mean that
it's
you're
it's
not
prequel.
impacted by it.
It's prequels. These are all
Yeah.
prequel. And so your
Yeah.
doctor will tell you. My wife, went through this, and she has high cholesterol, and
Yeah.
but she doesn't have a diet that supports the high cholesterol. And so the doctor says, well, she's 41. She says, okay, in the future, this is what's going to happen, and you're going to be prescribed this medication at some point in the future because you know, this is the treatment, plan for this. So a lot of this stuff is like, it's not bad yet, but it's like there are these symptomatics of, so if we keep on going the way that we're going,
Yeah.
it's like, do you treat diabetes when you got it? Or, this is the whole preventative, medicine
Yep.
sort of thing. This is why my dietitian is 100% covered by my insurance, because my insurance recognizes that even though I'm a healthy, high performing individual, but it's cheaper for them to pay for my dietitian than it is for them to pay for my cancer.
Amen. Absolutely. I wish more insurance companies and more public health systems would do that,
Right.
because the more we concentrate on those precursor signs and limiting disease at the front end, the less expensive it is ultimately, because we're not paying for strokes and heart attacks and long-term care later,
Yeah.
which is,
Drawing this back to, the stress conversation, is like, stress is they've proven 100% stress is a precursor to disease. Yeah. So if somebody, along with getting their annual physical, if we're promoting, if it was promoted to take a stress assessment every single year, and there's more that's available for people to deal with stress
yeah,
than there is available for them going to their doctor.
yeah,
It's like, through your community, through my community, through Dr. Joe's community, there is more available, and there's stuff that's free. There's stuff on
yep,
YouTube. You can go get it
yep,
right now to help
yep,
lower your stress levels, and that can stop you from, from serious diseases later on, or chronic condition, or it can even reverse chronic conditions that a person is, having now. Plenty of people have recovered from eczema by lowering their stress levels.
I mean, I kinda get the feeling like I could probably talk to you all day about this
I
stuff,
know.
but I think that as we kinda start to wrap up, I'm wondering, well, number 1, what have you got going on? What have you got cooking that you'd like to share with people? I just wanna make sure that that's shared before I go into my final sort of questions.
Sure. So I've got a book, Rewire for Calm, which is how to break
Nice.
through the cycles of stress and thrive. So this is, a great, self-help tool to being able to identify, what's causing, stress in your life, and it gives some of these practical tips of, how to do it. So this, Rewire for Calm by Jason Munson is available up on Amazon. Put it in this slide
Perfect.
too.
And there'll be a
Yeah.
link, don't worry, I'll share the
Yeah.
link in the description for sure.
So the corporate work I do, you can find on my website, which is neurolinkers.com. Neurolinkers.com is where you can find out, more about that, that work there. And there is a book it link right on there, where you can just hit the
But
contact button. It'll take you right to my calendar, and you can book a time with me. So, that's what I'm doing. I am at a point right now, and this is not always the case, because the work that I do is in high demand, and there's a limited number of people who have been certified in the work that I do at Dr. Joe Dispenza. So right now I have room just for a few more clients that I can work with, because we do get in this work intensely, because we are really, or I am really dedicated to helping people make changes. Billions of dollars get spent on corporate training every year. Most of it does not stick. We have a program that has staying power. It has proven sticking power inside of organizations. And, besides the clients that I have worked with, doctors and business owners and different practitioners, our organization has worked with Pfizer, it's worked with Sony, it's worked with Google, it's worked, with the United Nations, a bunch of Fortune 500 companies as well, that recognize that neuro leadership is the path forward. This is a competitive edge,
Mhm.
to have people operating, in this methodology of understanding how stress is affecting, their results, and being able to go from the old personality of stress and to put on that new personality of that creative thinking, where they're able to produce results like they never thought that they could produce before. So we're literally changing organizations from the inside out. We're changing these cultures into these thriving, cohesive workplaces.
Yeah.
So if you've got a team that's not on board, you got this high turnover, you have these high sick days, everybody thinks they're handling stress, fine, but people are constantly thinking about, worst case, scenarios, and there's conflict, and it's fragmented teamwork, there's poor communication, the customer's getting a poor experience, and everybody just seems that if we could just work harder, if we could just get the right people.
Can't muscle through these things, unfortunately. It is
And
not a possible thing.
there's an easier way. This is actually
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, exactly. And I love how you stated how stress resilience, because this is what this is, stress resilience is a competitive edge. It's not a nice to have. And organizations are quick to cut any of these kinds of programs because they feel like, oh, well, this will help improve costs. And it's like, no, guys, this is a need to have. You need to have stress resilience tactics, techniques, tools. So contact Jason, have a conversation before he fills up his practice again. So
Yeah.
yeah, fantastic. As we kind of close out, you know, how would you distill your learning and like a key takeaway for the audience, other than reading your book, obviously, and going to you for more advice and work? What would you say would be a tangible takeaway for people today that if they were to listen to this, like, what's the one thing you'd tell them they should really walk away with?
Oh, that's a great question. It's the one thing that they can walk away with. So I will tell you what I learned on that first day when I got out of my depression. And this has been the thing that I keep on going back to, is that you cannot focus on all of your problems and feel all of the negative emotions associated with those problems and focus on an ideal vision of your future and the positive emotions that you would feel with that. You can be in one place or you can be in the other, but you cannot be in both places at the same time. And if you are struggling with negative thoughts, negative emotions constantly, I invite you to write down that ideal vision of the future, not what you think you can get, but what would be ideal? What would you love to have if there was no limits? Write down the emotions. And if you're really in a bad spot, every time you start thinking of the bad stuff, just train yourself to use that as a signal to focus on this future and to focus on these positive emotions. And when every time you do that, you are rewiring your brain to the positive, and you are taking yourself out of that stress. So when I learned that and I applied that, there wasn't anything left to be depressed about, and that's how
Yeah,
I changed.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And the way I visualize it is I'm I visualize, I'm a very visual person. I visualize that the neural pathways I'm recreating, it's like I'm building an 8-lane highway. And then it may start at first with 2-lane highway, and then you're building it to a 3-lane. But I kind of, in my mind, I envision every time I context shift my thoughts to the more positive thinking, I'm thinking, oh, I'm building another lane here. I'm just going to concentrate on this. And eventually that other one, it becomes this like old, think
Right.
zombie like, dirt road with potholes in it. And you don't want to go down that road. You want to go down the 8-lane highway because it's easier. That's what you want to go towards. So
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for that. I
Well
appreciate it.
put. Well put.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks again for being here, Jason. I really appreciated having you on the show. I would definitely going to be putting the links down below so you can contact Jason directly, but also to get his book. Please make sure you reach out to him if you are an organization, even an individual who wants to inquire more on what he does and how he supports folks. And thanks again for being here. If you've listened and you're still listening and watching this, I just want to thank you for being here. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, do all the things because it's free. And it helps get this content out to other leaders just like you who need tactics, tools, maybe some advice on how to continue to deal with their own stress and be able to work through their life in a more effective manner and more joyful manner. So please do that. And until next time, folks, stay grounded, stay inspired, and remember to exhale.